Oftentimes, we hear things like, I don't believe in God, I believe in science. But what if I told you that you could never disprove God with science? Actually, quite on the contrary. Every time we learn more about science, we get closer to the conclusion that an intelligent cause must be behind all of this. But first, why can't science disprove God? Because God is a source outside of this world, and science only helps us understand things inside of this world. And if God exists, He created the world. He can be a part of what He created. But with the use of science, what we can do is look if the evidence of how the world operates points to an intelligent source being behind of it all or not. To get my point through, here's an illustration. Imagine you have never seen a car in your life and you stumble upon one. You start looking at the wheels, doors, and windows. Then you take a peek inside the engine and all the different mechanisms it has. So you start to learn how each of these things operate. You learn that wheels are made out of steel and tires out of rubber. You learn that the engine is made of cast irons and aluminum alloys, and that oil is used to lubricate moving parts inside the engine. But no matter how much you learn about the car, you will never get rid of the question. Did someone make the car? Was the car created and designed for a purpose? In the case of the car, you know that complex things always come from an intelligent being. These things don't just pop into existence without an intelligent being that put it there. So you conclude that there must have been an intelligent designer that designed this car. But there's not a thing inside the car that will tell you that someone did design it. You won't ever find the manufacturer inside the car because he needs to be outside of it in order to create it. When you conclude that someone designed the car, that's just a reasonable inference you make by looking at the evidence. We can do the same thing with God and the world. We can analyze how the world is arranged and see if it's more reasonable to believe that someone designed it or not. But what's the evidence for God? It all starts at the beginning. Almost all scientists, even atheists, agree that the universe had a beginning. It literally came out of nothing. That's what we call the Big Bang. Even Stephen Hawking, a prominent atheist, says, almost everyone now believes that the universe and time itself had a beginning at the Big Bang. We saw that science helps us understand the world. It does this by looking at the causes of things. But it can only do that for things that are inside the universe, inside of nature. But if nature itself had a beginning at the Big Bang, that means that its cause is not natural, but supernatural. Because in order to create something, that thing can be made of the thing it is creating. Nature can be created by more nature. So, at the Big Bang, all of reality was created. Space, time, and matter had a beginning. What does that tell us? That something that is spaceless, timeless, and immaterial created it. In other words, there must be an uncaused first cause that caused the universe to exist. But if God exists, who created God, you could ask? Well, the thing is that things only inside of time have a beginning. But like we saw, this being created time, so it must be timeless. And since it is timeless, it doesn't need a creator or a beginning, does it? So that's why we can call it the uncaused first cause. So, only with this, we have two possibilities. Either no one created something out of nothing, or someone created something out of nothing. Which view do you think is a more reasonable conclusion? But let's keep looking at more evidence. Arno Penzias won the Nobel Prize in Physics after discovering the radiation afterglow of the Big Bang. This is what he has to say. Astronomy leads us to a unique event, a universe which was created out of nothing, one with a very delicate balance needed to provide exactly the right conditions required to permit life, and one which has an underlying, one might say, supernatural plan. But what does he mean when he talks about the delicate balance? He's talking about the universal constants present in our universe that are necessary for it to be able to exist. These are forces that are precisely tuned to be able to sustain the structure of the universe. These include the law of gravity, the expansion rate of the universe, the oxygen and carbon dioxide level on Earth, and so on. I can't list them all, but there are actually 122 different universal constants, and they all depend on one another. The thing is that if you were to move the level of just one of these, a hair more or a hair less, we wouldn't be here. Life couldn't have existed. For example, let's just take one universal constant, gravity. If the gravitational force were slightly altered just by one part in 10 to the 40th power, that's a 1 followed by 40 zeros, stars wouldn't have formed properly, and without stars, there wouldn't be life. There wouldn't be us. That's a massive number that we don't have the capacity to understand. So here's an illustration. Imagine the whole Earth filled with lottery balls. Now imagine 1 billion more Earths all filled with lottery balls. You put all of these balls in one huge pile. You then paint one of them red and you mix it in. Later, you blindfold a friend and ask him to pick up the red ball. The chance your friend has to pick up the red ball is about 1 to the 10 to the 40th power. But what does this tell us? That someone had to place these constants in just the right amount to be able to allow life here. But maybe these laws had to be that way out of necessity. No, they didn't. They could have been any other way, but they're not. Fred Hoyle, an astrophysicist and cosmologist, puts it this way. A common sense interpretation of the facts suggests that a super intellect has monkeyed with physics, and that there are no blind forces worth speaking about in nature. The numbers one calculates from the facts seem to me so overwhelming as to put this conclusion almost beyond question. Even though it is extremely unlikely, you could ask, what if it was chance? Maybe we just had really good luck. But there's a few problems with this. First, chance is not an explanation of cause. It's just a vague description of mathematical probabilities. For example, when you throw a die, chance didn't cause it to land on a 6. Your hand movement, gravity, and other factors did. We just say it is chance because we don't know how to explain it. And second, even if it was chance, you still need something in which chance could occur. So you're not getting rid of the need of a source that created the laws of the universe in which chance could happen. You can't have a chance to get a 6 in a die if you don't have a die in the first place. Now let's head for our last stop. Here's a question. If you're walking in the city and you look up at the sky and it says, "Mary, would you marry me?" Do you assume that the clouds formed it? That it was the result of random processes? No! You conclude that some intelligent being wrote it there, because you know that only intelligent beings write messages. So now let's look at DNA. DNA, just like the words in the clouds, is a message. It contains 4 nucleotides that are arranged in a specific order. It isn't random, it's communicative. It contains information. DNA is the longest molecule we know of. It contains the blueprint for a human, by holding instructions for development, growth, and function. It also determines your traits, like eye color, height, and predisposition to certain conditions. But how much information does it actually have? Let's just look at an amoeba, which is a really small cell. This cell's DNA contains over 3 billion characters in it, all in the right order. If you were to make a comparison, each amoeba contains about 1,000 volumes of an encyclopedia worth of DNA. So you can begin to imagine how much information you have in your 100 trillion cells. Also, DNA is really complex. Far more complex than anything we have created. Bill Gates says, DNA is like a computer program, but far more advanced than any software ever created. But if a computer program needs a coder, an intelligent mind that put the code together. Wouldn't DNA, a far more complex system, also need an intelligent source? Believing that DNA came randomly is like believing that all books in a mega bookstore came from an ink explosion. It doesn't make sense. And just like we saw before, even if it did happen that way, it still needs a universe in which it can happen. So, the most reasonable conclusion is that someone made DNA the way it is. An intelligent being created that message, because we know messages only come from minds. Having looked at all the scientific evidence that points to an intelligent source, we can see that the first cause of the universe must be spaceless, timeless, and immaterial, but also powerful to be able to create a universe, intelligent to be able to do it with precision and fine-tuning, and personal because only personal beings can choose to create. So it's a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, intelligent, and personal being. What does that sound like to you? I don't know about you, but that sounds to me like God. Based on all this evidence, I think it takes much more faith to be an atheist than to believe in God. But which God? Even though we have looked at the most reasonable conclusion is that God exists, this evidence doesn't tell us which God. But I think that the most reasonable conclusion is that Christianity is true. But that's a whole other conversation. To know if Christianity is true, we just have to look at the evidence of the New Testament, and more specifically, the evidence regarding Jesus Christ. If Jesus rose from the dead, then Christianity is true. If he didn't, then it's false. It really is that simple. But we'll look at that evidence in a next video. Thank you so much for watching.